Right. Picture this. You wake up Wednesday morning, brew your tea, check the news, and discover your Prime Minister has just cheerfully signed away nearly £9 billion of your money to rejoin a scheme Britain specifically voted to leave behind. No referendum. No debate. Just Keir Starmer, pen in hand, grinning like he's won the lottery while simultaneously emptying your wallet. Welcome to modern Britain, where democracy is apparently optional and Brexit means absolutely nothing. Look, before we dive into this absolute shambles, do me a massive favor. If you're enjoying this chaos, smash that subscribe button. Over 94% of you watching haven't subscribed yet. It's completely free, takes 2 seconds, and honestly means everything to us here at British Mirror. Hit that notification bell whilst you're at it so you never miss when the government inevitably does something bonkers again. Cheers if you did. Right, back to Starmer's latest masterpiece of political sabotage. So here's what happened. On the 17th of December, Whitehall casually announced that Britain would be sauntering back into the European Union's Erasmus scheme. You know, that gloriously expensive student exchange program that allows young people to spend a year studying at European universities whilst British taxpayers foot an absolutely eye-watering bill. This isn't just any decision. Mind you, this is a massive, deliberate, calculated step toward EU reintegration from a Prime Minister who campaigned for Remain, voted for Remain, and apparently never quite accepted that he lost. Now let's talk numbers, because they're absolutely staggering. Rejoining Erasmus will cost £570 million in 2027 alone. For a single year. 1 year. That's more than £500 million for 12 months of membership to a club we specifically voted to leave. But here's where it gets properly mad. During the last 5 years of Britain's previous membership, we paid around £300 million total. So we're now paying nearly double per year what we used to pay over 5 years. Brilliant negotiating there. Keir, absolutely masterful. Gordon Gekko would be proud. And before you think that's the end of it, buckle up, because the Telegraph has reported that ongoing membership could actually cost significantly more. The EU is planning to increase funding for the scheme to €41 billion by 2028, up from £21 billion. Simple mathematics suggests Britain could end up paying £1.25 billion annually between 2028 and 2034. That's not a typo. Over £1 billion. Every single year. For 7 years. We're talking about potentially £9 billion over the lifetime of this scheme, and that's a conservative estimate. Here's the thing that makes this even more insulting. Labour themselves have estimated that 100,000 Europeans could enter the country by 2027 using Erasmus. 100,000. And when Sarah Jones, a Labour minister, was asked this week whether the government would cap the number of students coming in, she gave the most spectacularly evasive non-answer in modern political history. She told Times Radio she couldn't get ahead of any negotiations before they'd been completed or announced. Translation. We have absolutely no idea, we haven't thought about it, and we're basically making this up as we go along. Let that sink in for a moment. The government is committing Britain to a scheme that could cost billions, will allow potentially unlimited EU students into the country, and they cannot even promise basic controls on numbers. It's like signing a mobile phone contract without reading the terms, except instead of accidentally ordering premium rate services, you just bankrupted the entire nation. But wait, there's more. Because of course there is. A European Commission official helpfully pointed out that the terms of UK association to any successor program will be subject to separate negotiation. Read between the lines here. They've got us over a barrel. Britain pays an inflated amount to get back into Erasmus for 1 year, then won't want to leave again because that would be embarrassing. So we'll end up paying whatever Brussels demands for the next 7 years. As one insider brilliantly summarized, the truth is, of course, they just want to be liked by the EU and don't care what price they have to pay. It's like watching someone desperately trying to get back with an ex who dumped them, except the ex is now charging rent for the privilege of conversation. Now, this Erasmus debacle doesn't exist in isolation. Oh no, this is part of a much larger, more troubling pattern of behavior from Starmer's government. Just weeks before this announcement, Sir Keir publicly stated he was prepared to make trade-offs as part of his push for closer ties with Brussels. Trade-offs. That's political speak for, I'm going to give away things you value in exchange for things I want. And give away things he has. Labour has already handed the EU access to British fishing waters, those same fishing communities that voted overwhelmingly for Brexit partly to regain control of their own territorial waters. Betrayed. Labour has also promised to follow Brussels-set standards on food exports, essentially surrendering regulatory independence before negotiations have even properly begun. These aren't minor administrative adjustments. These are fundamental sovereignty issues that strike at the very heart of what Brexit was supposed to achieve. Control over borders, control over regulations, control over our fishing waters. And Starmer is systematically handing them back to Brussels like a child returning borrowed toys. The accusations have been flying thick and fast that the Prime Minister, an absolutely ardent Remainer, is trying to drag Britain back into the EU through the back door. And frankly, the evidence is becoming overwhelming. Just this month, Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy refused on 7 separate occasions to rule out rejoining the customs union. 7 times. That's not evasion, that's deliberate obfuscation. When a politician refuses 7 times to deny something, they are planning to do exactly that thing, and hoping you won't notice until it's too late. Sir Keir himself has described using Brexit to inform foreign policy as utterly reckless. Let me repeat that. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom thinks it's utterly reckless to base our foreign policy on the democratic decision of 17.4 million British voters. Apparently democracy is reckless now. Who knew? He's also promised a closer relationship with the EU by the end of his first term. Closer relationship. That's like your partner saying they want to spend more quality time with their ex. Nothing suspicious there at all. What's particularly galling about all this is the sheer contempt for democracy it represents. Britain held a referendum. The country voted to leave. We went through years of negotiations, political drama, multiple elections, and finally achieved Brexit. It was messy, it was difficult, but it was done. The democratic will of the British people was enacted. And now, less than a handful of years later, we have a Prime Minister who fundamentally disagreed with that decision, systematically dismantling it piece by piece, spending billions of pounds we don't have, making commitments we didn't authorize, and acting like it's got some kind of mandate to reverse the biggest democratic decision in British history. The Erasmus scheme itself isn't even particularly good value. When Boris Johnson pulled Britain out, he replaced it with a Turing scheme, named after the legendary British mathematician Alan Turing. The Turing scheme was designed to be more flexible, more global, and crucially, focus on students from disadvantaged backgrounds who wouldn't traditionally have access to international study opportunities. It opened up exchanges with universities worldwide, not just Europe. It was actually more ambitious and more equitable than Erasmus ever was. But apparently that wasn't good enough for Starmer, who seemed pathologically incapable of looking beyond Brussels for anything. Here's what makes this even more ridiculous. Students can still study abroad. Universities still have exchange programs. Nobody banned British students from attending European universities. The Turing scheme facilitated exactly that. What Erasmus offers is a very expensive EU-branded sticker on something that was already happening through other means. We're paying billions for branding. And let's talk about Nigel Farage for a moment, because the man has absolutely lost it over this. And frankly, can you blame him? Farage spent decades campaigning for Brexit, finally achieved it, watched it implemented, and now is watching a Remain-supporting Prime Minister systematically undo everything through bureaucratic sleight of hand. It's like watching someone build a house, move and decorate it exactly how they want, and then having the previous owner sneak back in at night and rearrange all the furniture. You'd be furious too. Farage has called this a massive betrayal, and it's hard to argue with that characterization. 17.4 million people voted for Brexit. They voted for sovereignty, for control, for independence from Brussels. And they are watching their government hand it all back without even asking permission. No second referendum on rejoining Erasmus. No manifesto commitment. No democratic mandate whatsoever. Just Sir Keir deciding unilaterally that he knows better than the British electorate and committing billions of pounds of public money accordingly. The timing couldn't be worse either. Britain is facing an absolute cost of living crisis. The NHS is struggling. Public services are stretched to breaking point. Working families are choosing between heating and eating. And the government has apparently found £9 billion lying around to rejoin an EU student exchange program that we already replaced with something better and cheaper. The priorities here are absolutely baffling. It's like your house is flooding, the roof's caving in, and you decided now is a perfect time to invest in a very expensive gym membership you'll never use. What's particularly insidious about all this is how it's being done. Quietly, bureaucratically, announced on a random Wednesday in December when everyone's distracted by Christmas preparations. No big press conference. No parliamentary debate. Just a Whitehall announcement and a metaphorical bill shoved through your letterbox. This is government by stealth, and it should terrify anyone who values democracy regardless of how they voted in 2016. The broader implications here are enormous. If Starmer can rejoin Erasmus without a mandate, what else can he rejoin? What other commitments can he make? How much closer to the EU can he drag Britain before someone finally says enough is enough? We're already seeing the groundwork being laid for customs union membership. We're already following EU regulations. We're already giving access to fishing waters. At what point does Brexit become so hollowed out that it exists only in name? Look, reasonable people can disagree about Brexit. Some think it was brilliant. Others think it was catastrophic. But surely everyone can agree that major policy decisions affecting billions of pounds and fundamental questions of sovereignty should involve some level of democratic consultation. The bare minimum. Starmer isn't even clearing that incredibly low bar. He's simply doing what he wants because he can. Consequences and public opinion be damned.